Today we'll be looking at a book called The Naturalist on the River Amazons by Walter Henry Bates. So this was published in 1859. Bates was an English naturalist and explorer, and the book is a compilation of his journals from a period, 11-year period, when he went to explore Brazil. So he left in 1848 and he arrived in Belém, first of all. He then ventured along the Cometa on the Tocantins River and up to the Amazon. He was then based in Tefe, where he set up camp and was based for 4 years. By the end of the 11 period, he sent back over 14,000 insect specimens, 8,000 of which were completely new to science. So he was a very established and really revered scientist. So he was finding observations of animals like jaguars, turtles, alligators, birds, snakes, which seemed incredibly exotic and really rather alien, not only to him witnessing them firsthand, but also when he was sending his accounts over to scientific organisations in the UK. He worked with the British Museum a great deal, and he actually sent a lot of actual specimens over to the British Museum. But I mean, the people who were receiving these specimens had never seen anything like it, really. So it was a real period of great discovery, and his explorations really did benefit science in a very interesting way. So it has great scientific quality, this book. But it's also really well written. There's very vivid descriptions of his time in Amazon, and he spends a lot of extended periods with different settlements and different tribes. So you actually get a lot of really detailed and really quite interesting anthropological observations as well. He's very open-minded, and he's very warm towards the different settlements, and they're actually, for the most part, they're very welcoming of him as well. Which I think it's because he was able to spend quite an extended period with these tribes of peoples that he was pretty much just welcomed into their communities for a long time. There's a really great a particular anecdote which I found really incredibly interesting is when he's in Katua, which is a settlement on the Amazon, and he gets invited along to the annual turtle egg harvest. This is where whole populations of villages, so generations of families will get involved. You'll get about 400 people, families in canoes, and then they try and harvest the turtle eggs, which they called tabulero. They dig these out of water banks, so you get elders banging drums, and then on the rhythm everyone digs into the water beds to try and scoop out the eggs, and then you're left with mounds of eggs about 4 to 5 feet high. These are then thrown into an empty canoe and mashed with prongs. So the descriptions of the chaotic, all the action, all the vigorous action going along, all the youngsters getting overexcited and mashing the eggs with their feet into the bed of the canoe. It's really vivid stuff. And then the oil that the oil that's the product of this process is then exported from the Amazon villages up into the upper Amazons and out to Para. Then it's used for fish frying, lighting and stuff. So it's basically a description of this process. Uses about 48 million eggs annually. It's really very fine anecdote, and there's a really great humour as well. He's talking about a big turtle skull that he finds and then sends back to the British Museum, and he gets a report saying that they're gonna display it in a really prominent place in the museum, and he speaks for a number of pages about how proud he is about this. So there is a great humour. Some of it's intentional. I think sometimes he's very much in awe of nature, but I think sometimes he has a certain mischievous quality to him. So here's a quote. This is a journal entry when he's in Katua, and it concerns his interactions with alligators. One day I amused myself by taking a basket full of fragments of meat beyond the line of the ranchos, and drawing the alligators towards me by feeding them. They behaved pretty much as dogs do when fed, catching the bones I threw them in their large jaws, and coming nearer and showing increased eagerness after every morsel. The enormous gape of their mouths, with their blood-red lining and long fringes of teeth, and the uncouth shape of their bodies, made a picture of unsurpassable ugliness. I once or twice fired a heavy charge of shot at them, aiming at the vulnerable part of their bodies, which is a small space situated between the eyes. But this had no other effect than to make them give me a hoarse grunt and shake themselves. They immediately afterwards turned to receive another bone I threw to them. So from that quote, he's pretty much he's just trying to rile up some alligators. Like, he starts out saying, yeah, it's all about scientific inquiry. I want to see how the species acts when they're being friend, how they act when they're being fed. But he just ends up just like throwing bones at them, trying to rile them up. So like I said, there's great humour in the novel. It almost kind of reminded me at times of the Jerome K. Jerome book, Three Men on a Boat, which is very much a comedy, very much played for laughs, looking at the sort of upper-class Englishmen in the late 19th century just messing around on a boat, pretty much. And there are instances where it does sort of verge into that sort of comic territory. There's lots of people falling out of boats. There's lots of riding up alligators. There's also, lots of people getting attacked by alligators stuff. But it's a very rich book indeed. And Penguin actually published a sort of, it's basically an extract of the longer work in 2007. So that's called In the Heart of the Amazon Forest, and it's part of their Great Journeys series. It's a very fine series. I've read another volume that was by Mark Twain, and then you've got other writers such as George Orwell. So you've got Fighting in Spain, Chekhov, Alfred Russel Wallace, Marco Polo. So you've got some really notable names in the history of travel exploration, but also some very, very fine writers in their own right as well. So do check that out.